What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters. Welcome to Live to Metal. Going to be doing part 2 to the thrash metal video I did last week. I showed 40 albums last week, and other than the top 10, I said they really weren't in any order. I'm going to do 30 more, a little more than 30, but 30 more essential thrash metal albums. And once again, they're not really in any order, just great albums I think need to be in any heavy metal, thrash metal collection. Once again, I'm going to start off with some newer albums. This is Ranger. Speed metal from Finland. This band was formed in, I think, about 2009, and they're sticking around still. This is actually their first full-length album from 2015. They had a bunch of EPs and demos and whatnot before this, but regardless, great stuff. Kind of inspired by the likes of Exciter and Venom, and you know, they kind of have that early 80s speed metal sound, but not to the point where I would call it more power metal, you know. Some people asked me in the last video, why didn't you include Metal Church? Why did you include this and that and the other thing? Some of those bands that I consider US power metal or just straight up heavy metal. Someone said King Diamond. You know, there's nothing wrong with any of those bands. I love all those bands, but they're really not thrash metal. So I'm trying to stick mostly to speed metal and thrash metal. Ranger are right on the cusp of that. I'd call them space metal. I call them space metal. I'd call them speed metal. So fantastic album, 2009 Ranger. Like I said, this is their first album. This next band was formed just a couple years ago, I believe. This is their first full-length album. They had a demo, 3-song demo EP before this, but this is Ritual Servant, METALLUM, EVANGELII. Patrick Best was the name of the guitar player, main man in this band. And Patrick's not new to the heavy metal or thrash metal scene, having been in the classic band Prowler for years before this, putting this out. So, like I said, they have an EP that came out first, that just came out on CD. Actually, do I have it sitting right here? I do. I haven't opened it yet. It just came in the mail. This was their first EP that was only released digitally and finally has been released on CD. 3 songs. And then this is their full-length album. Made my one. I think this is actually my #1 album for what was it, 2019. It's fantastic thrash metal. Very good stuff. I mean, very old school sounding. They're not trying to do anything new or, you know, different, or they're not trying to mix together styles. You know, there's no hip hop or there's no jazz mixed in. It's just thrash metal, but it's such good thrash metal. And this next band is ANGELUS, APATRIDA. One of the bands people mentioned in my last video to check out. Yep, love them. I have, I think, 4 of their albums. They were formed in Spain in 2000, I believe it was, and this is the album that turned me on to them. And it's actually Renee from Spain, Hospa Metal, on YouTube, who hooked me up with this album. And then I started looking into more of their stuff. So this is really, really good stuff. So ANGELUS, APATRIDA, old school thrash metal from a newer band from Spain. And one more newer band, although this band's not really that new. This band's from Canada. This is Rammer. Cancer, this is their first full-length album. Rammer were formed in the 90s, so, you know, like, they're not really that new. I think they were formed in the late 90s, though, like 1998. So, anyhow, fantastic, very raw, very aggressive. This is very violent. You know, this is definitely thrash metal. You're not going to confuse this as just speed metal or classic metal or heavy metal or power metal. This is thrash metal, 100%. They have a few albums out, EPs. I think I have 2 EPs on vinyl, and then another full-length album that actually was very odd because it was recorded, never released, and the record company released it by taking some of the EPs and folding them inside out and hand stenciling the covers. Very cool, like DIY release that was came out later. But in any case, Rammer from Canada, Cancer, great thrash metal. And there you go. There's some of your newer bands. Then we're going to get into, again, I did a couple EPs. This time I'm just going to do 1 EP, but this is essential. German, Teutonic Thrash, Destruction. This is the US cover for Sentence of Death, their first EP. Yeah, this is just chaos. Raw, very raw recording. You know, again, has that kind of early Raven or Venom kind of recording to it. Basically controlled chaos is what you're going to get here. You know, just raw, aggressive thrash metal. Destruction are, you know, very well-known band from the German scene. Generally held as in one of the top-tier bands with Creator and Sodom. So, pretty much if you're into metal, you probably know who Destruction is. But highly recommended EP from Destruction. US metal from California, Forbidden Evil. This one could have been in my first video easily. I just couldn't include everything, so I really, in that video, was just pulling stuff that came to mind that, you know, as favorites. So, Forbidden Evil, though, is classic. Again, they got cleaner vocals. Some would call this thrash, some would call it speed metal. It kind of, you know, rides that fence between the two. Most people would agree it's thrash metal, though. So, but Russ Anderson here, he's the vocalist, and he does have kind of a higher, clean voice, but he's very aggressive. Lots of hooks in this stuff. Fantastic band. Always loved this cover art too. One of the better covers to come out of the thrash metal scene in the early '80s. This would have been what, '85 when this came out or so. '88. Wow, it's even later than I thought it was. '88. Oh, a newer band that I managed to shuffle in too far, I guess. Freakings. This being their third album, I think. They have 4 or 5 albums out. Fantastic band from Europe. Again, they're all about the speed, all about the, you know, machine gun riffing, all about the aggression. You're not going to confuse these guys for anything other than thrash. Like I said in the last video, you know, you take a good jazz band and they play jazz. You know, they're not trying to play jazz and mix it with hip hop to make something new. Same thing with like the blues. You can take a good blues player and you know, he's boring because he's just playing the blues. No, he's playing the blues because that's the style of music he loves. That's the style of music he's playing. Well, same thing with Freakings. Freakings are playing thrash metal. They're not trying to be innovative and do something totally different from everybody else. No, they're playing thrash metal. That's the style of music they like, and they do a great job at it. Highly recommended. Freakings. They have, I think, 2 albums on vinyl. But I think 4 albums total. The first 2 I think were only available on CD. Now this next band is one that I don't know, man. To me, this is another band that I never really considered to be a thrash metal band. Again, I always considered them to be heavy metal, US power metal, but they did move into a thrash metal direction with this particular album. So this is Hellstar and Nosferatu. Again, this is pushing the line for me. I really think, I love Hellstar. I've said it a million times in videos in the past. James Rivera is one of my favorite vocalists. Seen this band live a couple times, and they were just awesome. But yeah, on this particular album, which was what, their 1, 2, 3, 4th album, I believe it was, they definitely moved into a more speed metal or thrash metal vein, whereas the first few albums were, you know, they had some speedy moments, but for the most part, it wasn't thrash. It was just straightforward heavy metal, or some would call it US power metal. And I'm kind of in that opinion here. This kind of walking the line between US power metal and speed metal. I would never call Hellstar a thrash band, but I'm including it because several people asked about it in the last video. And yes, I agree. Great band. Hellstar, Nosferatu. This is a Metal Blade reissue from several years ago. Alright, this next band is another one that went from being a power metal band to being a thrash metal band. Their first 2 albums were most definitely power metal, not thrash metal. But with their 3rd album, which this is not, this is their 4th album, but with their 3rd album, Know Your Enemy, they definitely moved into the thrash metal. You know, they had the heavy riffing, the fast, you know, machine gun riffing, as I call it, the hyper speed in the songs. I mean, it was definitely a push towards thrash metal. And with Annihilation Principle, which is their 4th album, there's no doubt about it. These guys were definitely, you know, taking that traditional heavy metal, mixing it with the speed and fury of punk, and creating their own brand of thrash metal. And they even did a cover of Holiday in Cambodia, a punk song, which actually became kind of a minor hit for them. So, a great band. I love Lost Rocket. They put out another album after this called Nothing Sacred, that again was thrash metal. And I could have shown any of those albums, you know, Nothing Sacred or Know Your Enemy, and all of them are fantastic in my opinion. And I love their first 2 albums as well. Their first 2 albums being more of a, you know, in the style of you know, bands like Metal Church or Heretic or you know, Reverend and that kind of thing, where it's pushing towards thrash. It's not really thrash, it's just heavy metal. I always call that kind of borderline, where it's heavy metal and almost speed metal, as being power metal, US power metal. So next band from Germany, Holy Moses, City's Gonna Burn. I'm sorry, City's Gonna Burn. Finish. City's Gonna Burn is Lost Rocket. Still got Lost Rocket on the brain. Finish with the Dogs. Yeah, Holy Moses is great stuff. I'm not uber familiar with this band, but I really like this particular album. This is, I believe, their 2nd album. I don't have the 1st album. It's on my want list. One of these days I'll get it, but this is actually a re-release on High Roller Records. Highly recommended. I believe this came out in, what, 1988 or so. So it's kind of towards the end of the, you know, the German thrash metal scene, where bands like, you know, Crater, Destruction, and Sodom and all those, and Accuser and all those bands were kind of ruling the scene. So Holy Moses finished with the Dogs. Okay, this next band is Swedish. This is Agony. The first Defiance. Kind of technical stuff. I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it. You know, it's not like like Texas band Watchtower, where it's like really super technical, or even stuff like Voivod. But it's kind of getting close to that. But just great stuff. I mean, if you like thrash metal, Agony are highly recommended. The first Defiance, can't do wrong with that one. Cool picture of the band on the back too. Gotta love that. That's some big hair right there. So does that make them hair metal? Another band that this is actually the album I discovered them on, but they had several before this, and they have a box set out now with their entire catalog, which I have. And, but this band's from Finland. This is Stone. My copy is kind of odd. It's a promo copy, I think. It's got a gold promo stamp on it, but it also has the lyrics on a sticker pasted to the back over top of their band photo, which is kind of annoying, but kind of cool at the same time because I've never seen another one quite like it. But yeah, Stone, just traditional thrash metal, and on the Mechanics label, which is the same label that Voivod was on at the time, I believe, and 1988 or so. I couldn't read the date, but I think it's around 88, 89, somewhere in that area. Next band is a U.S. band, and these guys are awesome. Very raw, very aggressive. Formed in their, I don't know, around 1983, 84, 85, somewhere in that area, under the name Blood Lust. But they changed their name to Blood Feast before coming out with their first album on New Renaissance Records. Actually, they were an East Coast band. They were touring around the East Coast. A friend of mine had seen them before they changed their name, and he had a Bloodlust button. I ended up finally getting one of those Bloodlust buttons. Looks just like this with the upside down cross and the Blood Feast. It just says Lust instead of Feast. Regardless, this is very raw. A lot of people call this B-grade Slayer. Alright, whatever. If it's B-grade, it's like a good B-grade horror movie. It's still very good, still very enjoyable. Raw recording, like I said. Fast, aggressive. It's exactly what you want from thrash metal. Cool cover to begin with. Yeah, some people are, immediately offended by the upside down cross. I don't get offended by symbols, especially one that's actually a Christian symbol to begin with. So, Peter's upside down cross was, it was rumored that Peter died didn't want to be killed the way his Savior was killed on a cross, so he was crucified upside down. But anyhow, if you look on even like the Pope's chair, there's some upside down crosses on there. But regardless, that's religion aside. Blood Feast were definitely, if you're offended by dark lyrics, then this is not your thing. But if you are offended by it, then this is great raw stuff. Menacing Thunder, Kill for Pleasure, Cannibal, Vampire, Bloodlust, Suicidal Mission. They were just writing whatever sounded cool. I love the next band, and the fact that they weren't in my last video was completely and totally a mistake, because I made a list and I just forgot to pull this album out of that list. So M16 by Sodom. Now, Sodom, another one of those big German bands, been around forever. Could have pulled their first EP out. Could have pulled, Agent Orange, which is probably most people's favorite album. But man, I just love M16. This is probably my favorite Sodom album. There's just something about this album. Everything about the whole thing is kind of, based on war and the horrors of war and whatnot. But I mean, you can't go wrong with Among the Weird Calm and I Am War and Napalm in the Morning. Napalm in the Morning. It's just such a great album. Such raw, aggressive vocals. Everything's kind of raw and aggressive, but it's well recorded. It's not like the first few albums were very raw, organically recorded. This is more refined. Obviously, they're better musicians. 20 years later. So it's I don't know. There's just something about this particular album that makes my top thrash metal albums list. So Sodom, M16. Could have easily picked Code Red as well, and I may actually have it. May actually be in this list. I tried to keep this one more to one album per band, but there are a couple of 2 albums per band in here. Although this one could have easily been in my other list. Tourniquet, Psychosurgery. Could have picked Stop the Bleeding as well. Either of the Tourniquet's first 2 albums are essential in my opinion. This is a 2011 pressing on... Actually, I think it's actually the first pressing. They actually changed the name of the album from Psychosurgery, 2 words, to Psychosurgery, 1 word on this one. But this one's coming out again, going on sale at boonsoverstock.com, I think today, which is, what is today, the 29th? So if you're interested in picking up this album, there are copies available at boonsoverstock.com. But yeah, this is super technical, speed metal, thrash metal, high-pitched vocals, King Diamond-esque at times. Not quite as much as King Diamond, you know, the high-pitched falsetto vocals that King Diamond uses. On the first Tourniquet album, there's a lot more of it down here, but it's still on here. But regardless, this is classic. One of my favorite albums of all time, one of my favorite bands of all times. And Tourniquet's still going. Ted Kirkpatrick's still releasing great stuff. Just put out an album last year, Gazing at Medusa, with Chris Poland on guitar and Ripper Owens on vocals. Yeah. U.S. power metal, U.S. thrash metal, Atrophy. This was kind of pushing towards the end of the 90s. It might have actually even been 1990 when this one came out. This is their second album. As far as I know, unless I have anything new, they only released 2 albums back in the 80s, and they're both fantastic. What these guys really had was hooks. You know, you wanted to shout along, sing along to the song, you know, pound your fist, bang your head, all that kind of fun stuff. So I can't recommend this band enough. Love Atrophy. If you can find this one on CD or vinyl, very well worth picking up. This next band's kind of forgotten about. This is another German band, and the reason they're forgotten about in thrash metal is because unlike a band like Law's Rocket or even Hellstar that went from power metal into thrash metal, these guys did the opposite. They started off with two thrash metal albums, kind of broke up, reformed with some new members, and went into a total European power metal style, and they're great at it. Love those power metal albums. But they also released 2 great thrash metal albums, this being the first, Into the Dark Past. Really good stuff. A little more raw, definitely rawer than you know, the power metal stuff they did later on in the 90s and the 2000s. But great albums nonetheless. If you're into the, you know, that German Teutonic thrash, which this album I think is a little more refined, a little more probably influenced by the California thrash metal movement, whereas bands like Sodom, Creator, Destruction, even early Accuser, you know, that they kind of had a more raw, aggressive sound. These guys are a little more, you know, kind of riding that fence between speed metal and thrash metal, although nobody would confuse this as speed metal. So, New Jersey-based band Hades. This is their first album, Resisting Success. Again, kind of pushing more towards the speed metal sound, in my opinion. Fantastic vocals. From Alan Tecchio. Alan, of course, also sang for Watchtower, and then during the 2015 Heathen's Rage reunion tour, he also sang for them too. Guy's got a great voice, and this is a fantastic album. Again, thrash metal, I don't know, maybe more pushing towards speed metal in my opinion, but if you're into speed metal or thrash metal, Hades is right up there. One of those great bands that really doesn't get any recognition. Kind of an underrated band. This next band is definitely underrated. And I actually have 2 albums here from them, but this is Betrayal, Renaissance by Death. Very, very dark band, California-based band. This band was formed in the 80s under the name Martyr, and then they kind of parted ways, and Martyr kind of split, and Betrayal went off and became you know, their own band with Marcus Colin was the main guy here, lead guitar player, with Chris Ackerman on vocals. Chris recorded the demos, and then he recorded this album, and he recorded the next album. I might as well just show them both because they're both in my list. So both albums very dark. You actually get a re-recording of Plead the Blood, which was an old Martyr song on this first album. On this album, I think they really stepped it up. Again, very dark, dealing with the occult and, you know, just... hang on, let me turn the air conditioner down here a little bit so it's not so loud. Again, very dark, dealing with the occult, like I said, and you know, the atrocities of therein. But musically, it's very dark as well. You know, it's heavy, but it also has like these clean acoustic passages mixed in. But it's not like it's ballads in here. It's just the whole thing just has this kind of eerie tone. Very unique band. Betrayal, The Passing, Renaissance by Death, and also I must say the guitar playing on here is awesome. They added a new guitar player, a new lead guitar player, to some Bob McHugh. That guy's a shredder, and you can hear it on this. You know, he's not like trying to do mousing or anything, but he just really added something to this second Betrayal album. Another Canadian band. I kind of mentioned this band in the last video that I should have included them in that one, and I probably should have, but you can't include everything. I only could pick 40 albums, so this is Sacrifice. This is actually my favorite Sacrifice album. I think this is like their third or fourth. I can't remember. But this one is where they were just a little more progressive, a little more technical, and of course I'm a big fan of, you know, prog and technical thrash and even prog rock to begin with. You know, bands like Yes and Nectar. So given that, mixing that kind of style with thrash metal is just right up my alley. These guys actually toured with Believer and Bolt Thrower. If you like, you know, the tech sound of Believer, this particular album by Sacrifice, Apocalypse Inside, isn't that far off from what you would have heard on, you know, the more progressive stuff from Believer. This next band also very technical. This is their second album. I don't have their first album on vinyl, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have shown it. But History of Time to Come, UK band SABBAT. Many hold these guys up as one of the best thrash bands that come out of UK. Of course, everybody knows that Andy Sneap, who is pictured in the back here, as you know, is a well-known producer now. He's produced tons of great albums, and he also was touring as Judas Priest's second guitar player on their last tour. Next band's a UK band as well. Detritus, Perpetual Defiance. This is an original UK pressing on Under One Flag. Great artwork from Rodney Matthews, one of my favorite, like I said, I said in the last video, one of my favorite fantasy artists. Very cool. This is another one, actually. This one's coming out today as well on vinyl. It's coming out on fire vinyl. Really cool looking fire vinyl. It kind of looks like the cover. Again, it Boone's Overstock. I didn't pull these because of that reason. It's just coincidence. But if you're interested in picking this one up, it's kind of hard to find the original pressing, but the repressing should be available at boonsoverstock.com. So I mentioned this band in the last video. Didn't show them. This band's more of the crossover. This band was also actually kind of a joke. I don't know, our side project from Charlie Bronte, Scott Ian from Anthrax, as well as what is his name from Nuclear Assault, Dan Locher from Nuclear Assault, and of course on vocals Billy Milano. And you know, Billy Milano went on to form MOD after this and continue that kind of crossover hardcore / thrash sound. Everything on here was offensive and purposely so. You know what I mean? It was very. I don't think they could get away with an album like this now. Honestly, with all the social justice warriors out there on social media, I think these guys would get destroyed for the lyrics on this thing, because they're making fun of everything on here. You know, this is back when bands and people had a sense of humor. So you know, they can get away with, you know, songs like, or titles like "Speak English or Die." It was total tongue-in-cheek, total joking. These days, you'd have to apologize for, you know, for a joke like that. So, regarding this, great stuff, very hooky, great, fantastic drumming. Charlie Benante is one of the unsung heroes of thrash metal drumming. So, another German band. This again rather technical. Mekong Delta. This was their first album. You can't go wrong with anything from Mekong Delta. They kind of moved away from thrash, got into more prog metal, not unlike Voivod did, but right here, there's no denying this is thrash. But again, very technical, very well performed, great musicians. Not, you know, not very melodic, but it does have some hooks. It's memorable, or perhaps I just heard it so many times that that's why I remember it so well. But regardless, Mekong Delta, great stuff. If you haven't heard them, well worth checking out. Next band, I believe, is I always mix this where they're from. I'm pretty sure they're a Swiss band, but if I'm wrong, I apologize. But Corner, again, I could have gone with anything from Corner. I love their whole catalog. And again, this is one of the bands that was mentioned quite a bit in my last video from people who commenting, you know, where's Corner? There they are. Part 2. I love this band, and again, these guys began to get more proggy as they went along. By the end, they were doing more of a prog metal thing, more so than thrash. But here, it was pretty raw, pretty aggressive. You know, you're not going to accuse these guys of being, you know, it's not Black Album Metallica stuff here. You know what I mean? This is pretty raw and aggressive stuff. So very good album. R.I.P. from Corner. Next band is another crossover band. This band from California. I believe they're from Fresno, but I'm not 100% positive of that. This is their second album. This is a reissue with a different cover, actually. But this is The Crucified, band who started off as a punk band. They actually put out a few demos and the Nailed EP before putting out their first full-length album on Pure Metal Records. That album was definitely, you know, punk-inspired thrash crossover. But this album, they just moved purely into the thrash metal. There still is that punk fury, and Mark Solomon, the vocalist, still has that kind of punk delivery to his vocals, but the music is just thrash. Jim Chafin, fantastic drummer. One of my favorite drummers, actually. Actually got to play in a band with him for a short time, and a real nice guy. He actually has been playing in Deliverance as of late, and I think the punk band The Blamed. I mentioned this album earlier. I wasn't sure if I pulled it or not, but German band Sodom, so I did pull the album Code Red. I like this one as much as M16. Those two albums, they actually came out, you know, one after the other, and both of them are fantastic. Obviously, as you can see by the cover with the blood gushing all over the place, and the soldier with the chainsaw arm, and it's pretty brutal stuff. It's all, again, war-themed lyrics. So, and you know, the atrocities and the craziness of war. So Sodom, Code Red. And another making their second appearance in this list. This is the first album from Tourniquet. This is actually, again, 2011. This is a reissue. Cover's been changed. This album was just re-released by, again, Retroactive Records probably a month ago. The pre-orders went on this one, and it's the original cover, which is very similar to this one. It just doesn't have all this blood in the background. But yeah, this is a great album. Stop the Bleeding. It's thrash metal meets King Diamond. It's got that kind of, and it's because of the vocals of Guy Ritter. Guy's got this, he's got this cool singing voice, but he also has this very cool high-pitched falsetto voice that, you know, kind of echoes King Diamond or Nasty Ronnie, another band I could have brought in, or Nasty Savage. So much great thrash metal. Anyhow, very hooky stuff. Ted Kirkpatrick's just one of my favorite drummers of all time, and a super nice guy as well. I've worked with him on projects, so well worth checking out. Tourniquet. Next band, I believe this band's from Chicago. I didn't look it up. And there's two bands with the same name, and I have stuff by both. Both were thrash bands, so I mix them up every once in a while. One of them was from Arizona, one of them was from Chicago. I'm pretty sure this is the Chicago band. Hold on a minute. Okay, almost had an avalanche of records going on over there. So Aftermath. I've had this CD on this album on CD since the 90s when it came out. Let's see. So the Eyes of Tomorrow album came out in 1994, and so I've had the CD since '94, and it's always been one of my favorites. It's kind of an underrated gem because most people have not heard of this band. Came out on vinyl again on Shadow Kingdom Records back in let's see what it says here. 2015 this was pressed, so I don't know if it's still available, but it also includes a bonus record which contains demos from 1989 and demos from 1996. So very cool stuff. Again, very technical. Almost reminds me of Chuck's Death once in a while in the sound. So it pushes more towards that that death metal style of the you know, late 90s. Excuse me, early 90s, but still great stuff. I would definitely not call them death metal, but thrash metal. Iron Angel, they have two fantastic albums. Again, another one that's kind of chaotic, fantastic cover art. Again, you know, what you want from thrash metal: machine gun riffing, noisy, over-the-top guitar solos, fast-paced songs, hooks, which is one thing that I really enjoy about thrash metal as opposed to, like, say, metalcore, where metalcore, it's all about, you know, someone screaming at you like a ticked-off drill sergeant at a lazy cadet, and it's just, you know, that pseudo-macho kind of screaming, and then there's the breakdowns. It's, you know, it's not really about songwriting and hooks, and definitely not about guitar solos, and that's what I like about thrash metal. It's got the speed, it's got the aggression, but it's also got hooks and melody, and that's what you're going to get with Iron Angel and Hellish Crossfire. And again, I always like this cover with the, I don't know, it looks like two mortals. I'm getting ready to fight like two demonic gods up there or something like that. And I believe this is the last one. Yes, this is the last one. And again, this band easily could have been in my last video. Had I thought of them, you know, when I was pulling those 40 albums, they would have been, because, again, one of my favorite bands. This is the first album from Canadians Annihilator, Jeff Waters, Alice in Hell. Great stuff. Again, melodic at times, big hooks, clean singing, but still aggressive. Jeff Waters has a very unique style of guitar playing. He's, you know, you could kind of tell it's a Jeff Waters riff. And I like the entire Annihilator catalog for the most part. I mean, he's had a few missteps for the most part, but like the last 3 albums he's put out have been fantastic in my opinion. But most people would consider this one here a classic. A little late on the scene. I believe this was like 1988 or 89. But regardless, it's still a classic. Considered a classic. I consider it a classic. I actually have an original pressing of this, and then, but it wasn't in the greatest shape. So when this thing came out on Music on Vinyl, who does a great job with reissues, I jumped on it. Roadrunner Records, Music on Vinyl, classic album, 180 gram audiophile vinyl pressings, Alice in Hell. Again, lyrics. He's always kind of been a little goofy with the lyrics. Sometimes it's, you know, socially conscious. Sometimes he's just telling stories of his own life. Sometimes it's just silly. Like songs like Word Salad, and on the next album they had a album called Craft Dinner, which is basically a song about macaroni and cheese. But I don't care. I think it's fun and I enjoy it. So there you go. That's my last album for this list of 30 plus essential thrash metal albums. Annihilator, Alice in Hell. That's it. 30 more. Appreciate you all watching. Definitely appreciate all the comments. I try and reply to all of them. If I missed you, don't worry, I'll get to you. But I just, you know, when you get 100 comments, which is fine, I love 100 comments, it just takes a little more time to get through all of them. So that's it. Appreciate you all watching. God bless. Stay strong.